right, so before we get started, if you guys would be super duper awesome and actually download the bit.ly link, which somehow got truncated on the side, right here, oh, exit full screen, right here, for bit.ly Analytics Android. This will come into part of the live demonstration that we're going to go into as part of this session. So I want to give you kind of a quick overview. We're going to touch on a lot of different things, including areas that are not specifically just the analytics package, but also things that you can do with the analytics packages. So we're going to touch a little bit on some areas like cloud functions, compute, and then give you kind of insights to different things that are going on with like Firebase predictions and machine learning, and then doing fancy stuff with things like BigQuery. But we're going to try and make those portions a little more condensed just so that you kind of understand what tools are out there to use the data that we're going to kind of show you how to collect today. All right? So has everybody downloaded the app? Because you'll be able to play with kind of seeing yourself and how you use it. I will say this, there is a very important bit of information that is in the release notes, which is the username and password that you need to use in order to log into the app. The username and password are fake, just like the rest of the app. The source code is also available in a link on the actual page. So, cool. All right. So, hi, my name's Stacy. I actually work not for Google, yet I really like the Firebase Analytics platform. I think it is by far the best in its category, at least for the application analytics side, for a couple of reasons. Price, ease of use, and scalability. If you are kind of familiar with a lot of what Firebase does, a lot of things are along the lines of databasing and things like that. It's not particularly useful for kind of apps in large companies, but one area that we've kind of struggled with is kind of good quality analytics. And when you look at what Google Analytics has done and evolved into, you're getting all of that plus into the Firebase Analytics side. And we'll show you some of the features that come into that. So again, before we start, grab that app. So I'm going to give you the little video because it explains it a lot better than I can in a lot shorter amount of time with beautiful pictures, and apparently somebody is hip chatting me for some reason. But let's see if audio works here. Oh, nope, I am not hearing the audio. Okay, let's make sure that that actually is wunderbar. Nope. Sound. Let's go with that. Do we have audio? No, I do not hear any audio. Nope. Alright, so where is audio on here? I don't see it. Well, good news is this application this slide deck actually already has the video linked into it. So what you can see here is Google Analytics for Firebase is going to give you a really awesome dashboard just off the bat with the parameters that you put in, and give you a lot of customization in terms of looking at things such as ScreenView and looking at demographic information, user querying and grouping, and a lot of other features that you probably haven't gotten that into. Now, usually this is something that you would do against a fairly large database. You'd put it into some sort of custom piece of software. The price of that usually starting at around $20,000 a year. And in this case, you're getting all of that for nothing. Now, there are some bits of that we'll go into and where you would start to want to pay for certain things and where that might make sense for you, but that's a little bit later in the presentation. So, deep analytics and dashboard. What's unique about Firebase Analytics is that it is a, quote, real-time analytics. Real-time is a little bit of a, I'm putting a quote around it, primarily because when you're just starting out and you have an application that doesn't have a consistently large user base, you are not going to see that data in real time. It does not prioritize your traffic. Just the same way that Google wouldn't prioritize like maybe your personal website traffic versus the website of the employer that you have, right? So in that case, you will see it in real time once you actually have a fairly large user base. But if it's probably one of the less used configurations, the data is not as prioritized. So it's just not popping up on their side, even though it is being sent. So what can you do with some of that? You're going to be able to do things like deep user interaction and grouping. So you're going to be able to make cohorts and be able to make correlations and not have to know programming in order to do it. This is the most friendly to project managers and product managers and UI and UX experience folks that I've seen in terms of a product like this. Well, okay, what if I really want to see how my users are using the app, not just look at them in a congregation, but maybe I want to target just seeing how people are actually using it in real time? You can actually do that. There's a feature called ScreenView where you can actually go through and pick people who are currently using the application and anonymously view what their event traffic looks like and the timing is, along with a little bit of extra information in terms of where the user is and what group they might fit into. And now you can combine some of the stuff that you actually collect as part of your Firebase Analytics into Google Analytics and existing analytic tools. So what does that really mean? Firebase Analytics, or Analytics for Firebase, Google Analytics for Firebase, God knows what they keep rebranding it as. It's quickly becoming the most complete analytics solution that you will see out there. And it's actually very easy to integrate, which we will show you in real time. So I touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but what are some kind of compute and more advanced functions that I might be able to do? And how might that I find it helpful? So Fabric is also kind of integrated, but also kind of not. They keep kind of keeping those separate. So if you've been a Fabric user, they recommend that for any of the analytics stuff that you move that directly to the Firebase for Analytics platform, but they are still recommending at this time that you keep your crash information on the Crashlytics/Fabric side of things. Even though Google Analytics or Firebase Analytics actually does have crash reporting, there's just a little bit nicer tool set, I guess, around the Crashlytics side of things. So you can put them all in one place, but for right now, they still recommend that you keep those two separated. So again, you can actually track user engagement. So you can actually see how long somebody is taking on a screen, how long the screen is taking to load. You can actually do integration with what is called Firebase Performance. If you're on their beta, which you can absolutely sign up for, you can actually get information about how long their API response calls are, how long is this HTTPS request taking, and how is that affecting the user engagement on that page. So you can start marking when a page is loaded, when stuff's going through, and move on from there. So since you get that all together, you can do Firebase experience monitoring. So you can actually tag certain things with, okay, this is a first open, this is an attribution. Now I can start to see how that actually affects what I consider my core user experience. And then you can start doing things with cloud functions, because there's Firebase cloud functions now, and build fully automated systems. There's also TensorFlow compute engine integration you can do. And now there's a new component called Firebase, it's not performance monitoring, but it's basically so that you can make these kind of inquiries and machine learning algorithm stuff actually work really well together. And I can provide a link to that information kind of towards the end. But you can also do phone number based authentication of users. So one of the things that's kind of a continuous problem, especially from the Android and iOS side, is being able to track a user consistently from phone to phone without having to do kind of a GUID or some sort of non-semi-anonymous user tracking, right? So if you're somebody who has a login, then that makes sense. But if you're somebody that wants to be able to track a user and and they may not actually log in, say if you work for a large retailer, somebody might actually just have the application on their phone and be using it to do purchases, but they only do so in a guest format, right? So being able to track that user, how they're actually interacting with the application and moving through things does have a lot of value. So it's fanciness. It's all about the fanciness. Fanciness to do categorization and true user-centered design without actually having to know all that stuff. And also, when I show you how simple this is to integrate, you're going to go, oh my God, this is so dead simple. Because it totally is, and it should be. So you can start doing user-centered design and performance. You know your API team? You know how sometimes you got to give them Charles proxies and all that other jazz? Now you just point them to a link, say, the data tells me this API is really, really slow. And why is it really, really slow for this customer in this area? Well, it might be that one of the relay points on your cloud system has got a problem. It could be the API team. It could be something that gets used by multifaceted teams in order to solve things and you can set triggers and alarms based off of that information because again, it's still Google Cloud. So you can do the same things that you do normally with Google Cloud as part of that. So setting up Firebase. So simple, I can't believe I'm showing this. So how simple is Firebase to actually set up? Well, let's just go ahead and open up a new tab. And let's make my tabs full screen for a moment. And just go to firebase.com. All right. All I do from here is I hit go to console. And then I go add project. And I'm just going to call this Windy City. Windy City, create project. All right, so from here, all you do is grab your information from your application. So in this case, I already have maybe some info here. Now, granted, I'm just using like a really terrible package name. That's not what the production one is. But if we go, where did that go? Oh, all right. So where's my mobile login preview? Windy City? Okay. So on here, we're just going to put that right there. And we're just going to call this FB Analytics, right? Not Facebook. So there you go. You've already generated a config file. And we have it right here. You can see what it looks like. Let's see if we can make this nice and big. View. Where's my view bigger? But as you can see here, it's just a simple JSON file with just some configuration values. And then you can basically just take that and let's go to my code app. And all you do is take that Google JSON file and you just drop it into your app folder. And all of that's going to be picked up. Now, how do we actually get everything started up, get it building with Firebase and all that stuff? That is where we actually come into the piece of codes. So on here, you can download the code. So if you want to, you can go to my GitHub page, grab the application, and you can literally follow right along with what we're going to do. Does anybody else need this? It's just bit.ly Firebase Analytics Workshop code, all caps on the beginnings. And when we get to there, all right. So we've actually opened up this code, and there's a few things I have to do first. Is I need to actually look at my Gradle files, right? Because the first thing that we have to do is actually add the dependencies. In this case, the first one that you add is just Google Services. Now on the example code, I just have all of these kind of blocked out, so you can just hit the / back, right? And first thing we need is Google Services. Note, you don't need kind of anything fancy there, but that just needs to be in your kind of main Gradle file. And then in your app Gradle file, you need to have the Firebase analytics. In this case, I'm using 11.2, which is not the most up-to-date version, but it's pretty darn close. And then that's basically all you actually need. So, and you need to get the GMS plugin applied. This has to be at the bottom. I don't know why this is the only plugin that only works when you put it at the bottom, but they even put it in the footnotes for the GMS services that you have to do the apply plugin for this at the very bottom, probably because of weird compilation dependencies. But I haven't investigated it. I don't really care that much. So just remember, put it at the bottom. So now that we've got those two set up, let's hit save. And then there's nothing special you have to add here in the manifest. There's no special permissions or anything else like that. In this case, I'm only using 3, which are all related to get accounts, get contacts, and things like that. And even that is actually perfectly optional. So there's no extra permissions required for you to do anything with the analytics package. So let's just start with kind of the main application. So how do I actually start up my Firebase Analytics instance? They have it that you should kind of just get the one instance and then repeat through it. But every time you get the instance, it's going to end up being the same. So you just need to start it up once, in this case in the onCreate. And you can see right here, I'm just doing a declaration at the top. And can you see this well, or would it help if I go into kind of present mode? But right here, you can see that there is some other things that we can do. These are kind of specialized, and they aren't really published well on their website. But you can actually do what I call add special, which is you can set the session timeout duration, set the minimum session duration, and set whether or not the analytics collection is enabled and disabled. This is actually going to be something pretty valuable if you have a user who opts out of analytics. Being able to just set that once without having to go through the rest of your code or any other places that you actually set these values and reset them. Kind of nice to just have a simple config. Now, why would I care about session timeout and session duration? Well, every session is essentially a certain amount of data collection time and then sending it up. Now, this is actually being done through Google Cloud the same way that the rest of all the Play Store apps and all that stuff is actually managed. So this is network dependent, which means that quality of network depends on what data gets there and how fast. If somebody's on a Wi-Fi network, it does not care. It doesn't do the bundling as much as it would if they were on a cellular network, especially if they're in a low-quality cellular network. This also means that if you do send stuff up for analytics, it's low-priority data, and that data is handled accordingly, so you don't have to do the manual data management that you probably are used to with Job Scheduler and putting it into the essentially Google Cloud Manager for that. So that's pretty convenient. Session duration, you might want to just say, hey, if they aren't doing something, let's cut them off. Your session durations, maybe you aren't expecting somebody to play somebody probably isn't going to be reading an article for more than 2 or 3 minutes. Somebody probably isn't going to be using a pure information application for longer than maybe 10 minutes at a time. So maybe you just set a timeout duration. Now, when it comes to our application, we have kind of cool stuff here. So let's show it off. Now, this is the first page of our application. I'm going to just show you what it does, and you kind of tell me what are some things that we might actually want to capture. And that's, hint, hint, an opportunity to pick a prize. So first thing I'm doing is I'm actually allowing contacts. And then in this case, I actually have previously saved user login information. So there's two different, this is a slightly different login than what you may have. So I can do sign in or register, and then it checks it. And then I'm going to have, okay, which food is your favorite? What's everybody's favorite food out of the ones that are shown here? Come on, a little bit. All right, hands for pizza, hands for burgers, hands for hot dogs. I hate to break it to you, but I think pizza wins. So we're going to choose pizza. And then here I just have it going through kind of a tabbed fragment, nothing fancy. I can see when you touch things, but again, nothing fancy there. So what is something that we might want to track in terms of the information that we just saw in this very ridiculously simple application?
On-touch events?
Raise your hand. Raise your hand. You're an adult. You can do that. Go ahead.
On-touch events?
On-touch events? On-touch events like what? Why would I want to capture every on-touch event?
For security purposes. You can kind of...
No, not really, because remember, this is analytics. What are you trying to capture with analytics? You're trying to capture events. You're not trying to capture small interactions. You're supposed to be capturing things about what and how they're interacting. If you're trying to get that level of granularity, you should probably be doing some more direct user testing. But, okay, somebody else?
Which food option was selected?
Which food option you selected. Now, what would I want to actually attribute that to? Would I want to attribute that to something a little bit more interesting, or is it an event in itself, or is that a categorization?
Both.
Ah, both. Okay, good answer. And
context from the device.
So you automatically are getting information about the device, location, demographic info. That's automatically happening with Firebase. I don't have to manually collect that. So maybe what is something else? The whole point here is to totally abstract you from any of the kind of nitty-gritty stuff that you're used to having to kind of manually put together, like was the device connected, what was the quality of the network, what was all this stuff, and allow you to focus more exclusively on what is the experience that I'm trying to track within my application, and how do I best provide that for my user. So
Login attempts?
Login attempts, that's a good one. That's a really good one. All right, you two come and pick a prize. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry, bro. On touch events, somebody has to lose. I'm sorry. This is life. I hate to break it to you, but you just got the bad card.
I'll take this.
All right. Would you like a blood cell or a business card holder?
The business card holder.
Oh man, literally, you guys got no love.
My daughter's name is Eleanor.
Ah, okay. So then, see, he knew immediately. That's when you knew, right? They're like,
I didn't see the name. I just picked it.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so you guys pointed out some events and some categorization and things like that we might want to track. Well, the first thing that we actually hit in this application is the login activity. So what are we going to do first? We're going to get our instance of Firebase Analytics. In this case, we're pulling it off the same thing we are for main application. But also, if you just do a pull of the instance, kind of as long as you're using the same context, it'll give you the same instance. Because guess what? It's a system-wide instance. You just happen to have access to it. So you don't really need to do anything fancy there. But on resume. So in on resume, which if you guys remember from kind of all the little stages of an activity, on resume gets called at the start, not necessarily purely at the resume, right? So kind of once we've loaded everything, let's do something like send the screen information. So this is one of the things that isn't necessarily covered very well in their just base documentation, but there is a parameter called ScreenView. ScreenView is whatever screen is currently up. Now, by default, it only captures the activity name, but you can set it to whatever you want it to be and as soon as it actually is shown. So remember that OnResume is kind of a good place for this because it happens when the screen is first shown, and then it also comes back if the screen is re-shown, right? So you don't have to handle like on restart and all that kind of stuff. If you're just tracking whether or not the screen was shown, this is a good place to do it. So in this case, I'm just going to take the actual context. I have a particular title for it, and then I'm just setting it so that when I actually get the analytic information, I'm going to get not only the activity it came from, but also the duration that it was on that screen and the name that I assigned that screen, which is kind of extra nice information. So login success. You said that earlier. So there actually is a parameter inside of Firebase Analytics package to automatically handle event login and login success. But there's maybe some other things I want to track about this. So maybe I want to do a custom event. So login doesn't, by default for this parameter, have an associated true, false, or positive, negative experience. So in this case, maybe I want to have it actually provide that this was the login page, and I want it to tell me whether or not it was successful or failed, but I don't want to count it towards the normal number of logins. So like you might have the custom event name of login, that's just your successful logins. But maybe you want to differentiate your successful versus unsuccessful, that you can assign to a totally different event parameter and actually make it so that it's a little bit easier, honestly, for people who are not so techy to see how many there were. Because if they just see the number of event firings for login, a product manager is not going to go and look successful versus unsuccessful. They're just going to see, oh, login, they had this many, versus I can send login success and I can actually give them a little bit better context in terms of were they successful or how many failures did they have before we saw the login come through correctly. So that was a really good example of a thing to actually track, because that happens all the time and it can show up a lot of frustrations with your login page, especially if you have things hidden behind logged in content. So we don't really have anything else here in the main activity, login activity. So now we're going to move to the main activity. So what's nice is everything is hidden behind Firebase Analytics parameters. So you can see we're just getting the instance the same way that we did in the previous version. But now I want to set a user property. Now, I already had set the user information with kind of that login info that we got from the login activity, but now you can do things such as setting a user property. If you want to do categorization of your users, which you said it was both an event and a user categorization, you can actually have it do both and have it fire an event as well. But in this case, we want to be able to say at the end of this, all our users that really like, cats tend to go towards this product that is more geared towards this way. Or we can say like something about our preferences from our users is giving us other information that might be very useful to advertisers and things like that. So that's not something that you're always going to get from the AdMob side of things. And it can be pretty useful sometimes. So I also have a share button in here, which you can actually use to just share something. We want to be able to log the event, share image, and give it a custom parameter. So these are custom. Doing custom versus doing the standard ones doesn't really make a difference, other than for the custom parameters, Firebase doesn't immediately recognize those, and I'll show you that in the console. And all right, when they actually see the image, we're going to record that information and give it a parameter, an ID, an ID name, and content type, and then just say that it was select content. And then here for setting that current screen. So every time they actually flip through all of those different fragments, we can actually track it. And there's no more in here. And I don't believe I have anything in terms of the image info. And the image fragment, again, we just don't really have anything we need to track in there. So, did you guys download the application? Why don't you get out your phones, and we'll see what that actually looks like. So you can see some of this information also in here for doing user grouping parameters and automagic kind of setting of screens. This one in particular you might find really nice for being able to take all of your fragment screens and just automatically set the name according to whatever you set the title to, so that you only put this in one place and you don't have to add this to a bunch of different places. You just add it to like your main line or your base activity info, or do an event system. So now we're going to actually explore the dashboard. So what does the dashboard look like, and how would I actually get there? So here we're just going to go to the Firebase Analytics Workshop. Earlier we created a configuration, but this just happens to be one that is a little bit more recent. So we can actually start to see some information. Active users. So how many have there been active this month? There was a lot in January, which was actually kind of when December, late December, when I kind of published the application. And there's been 3 this week. Probably all 3 of them are myself. But I can tell that you guys have actually been using the application, because I can see right here, users active in the last 30 minutes. Let's hit up the ScreenView. Well, isn't that cool? Let's start zeroing in on some of the people in this room. And I have 6 active users right now. Okay, come on. And I can see you. I can see your top user value. You guys are some, people on the cutting edge. Everybody's on 8.0, or at least most people are. But let's hit a user snapshot. So I can see that you are in Chicago. I don't have a picture for you, but you seem kind of happy. I don't really understand it. But now you can start to see. Why don't you guys play around with your phones? Let's see if we can get some people to actually log in. Somebody was playing with it for a decent amount of time. So here I can just see they actually viewed some screens, but it doesn't look like they actually logged in. And let's see, there's an unknown device all of a sudden. This person seems super happy. That is the happiest I've seen, but they have done nothing. So why are they so happy? All right, come on, somebody successfully log in.
I logged in.
I logged in.
Okay, come on. Has it got us? That's got you? Gotcha. Let's go. ScreenView. Events. Ooh, we've got 143 events in the last, like the last 30 minutes. That's pretty cool. Your top is ScreenView, which makes sense because you're looking at a screen, and that one happens automatically. Select content. That means you've actually like kind of hit some stuff and went through some screens. And but there's only been 3 people starting sessions, so that has to mean something, right? So, and one person has already uninstalled the application. You guys, you're like, this is some bull. So, and I kind of agree with you. If you rate this with 0 stars, I will not judge. In fact, that's probably what it deserves. But okay, let's see if we can see a better user snapshot. Okay, I see screenshot, user engagement. Ah, there we go. Now we got a campaign going on. Fancy. So we know that you actually viewed the login activity, you're having a engagement with the application. You actually seem to be pretty happy. I don't know why. Oh, ooh. Now I found who it was. Somebody with a Google Pixel in this room is the person who uninstalled it. So we know who to judge now. Because there's not going to be 10 million of those here. So, yeah, you can see. Wow, more than one app removal, guys. Really? You guys suck. I like you, but you suck. It's okay. I feel that way about my friends. So, what can we see as far as information? This was completely auto-generated. So this has had no tweaking from me whatsoever in terms of what is showing up on this page. So how much revenue is my app making? The answer is $0. Because I'm all about that hype beast life, which means nothing. So. And you can see my version is all 1.0, and we can see some of the information on the user event details. So if I click through from there, I'm going to get a direct kind of deep link into information about ScreenView. So like where I said earlier, ScreenView automatically just sends the screen class. We only will have login and main activity because those are the only 2 activities we have. But because we actually added information to track those other screens, look at this. We have the A, B, and C from our piece right here. So you can see we have these tracks actually being tracked, which is kind of nice and important. Web page, Firebase Analytics. So you can see how long people actually stood on the page. The answer is usually less than a second. Sign-in took them about 10 seconds, and we aren't even actually tracking performance information here because this app doesn't connect to the internet. It's a totally fake sign-in page. It takes 3 seconds for it to actually move to the next screen. It's just a little progress loader. So what can it tell me about your audiences? So right now, we don't have enough information to show you some of this, but if you get a little bit more advanced, you will start to see a lot more about the demographics of your user. So this is actually some information from another kind of install of mine, but you will start to see things like what kind of a user and category do they actually fall into in terms of their usage. Very useful information when you have a client-facing application to know some of the interests that they might have. You can get a little bit more granular with this if you have some other integrations with Google products, especially on the Google Analytics side, and some of the stuff I'm going to show you in a bit. But, all right, now I can see the activity. Where are they actually accessing my application from? So you will see actual apps that are US exclusive being accessed in China and Australia and South America and all kinds of places. And then, interesting, I can actually go through and say, how many male versus female, and some other interests in different ages, and then I can also do things like split them on what phones they have and what operating systems they actually have. But There's some disappointing information in some of this. Now this is a better example of an actual ScreenView. You can actually see, just like you pointed out earlier, that we can have some issues here, like especially in authentication. This ScreenView is showing me that the user has tried to log in multiple times and they are failing at it until they finally finish right here. So they actually had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 failed attempts at login before they actually completed. That is actually a fairly normal number, to have between 3 and 5 failed login attempts without user-saved credentials. So maybe you want to start looking at, how do I actually save their credentials and do some sort of fast login? And you can use this information to justify new features that you want to be able to build. But, okay, there's a bit of a problem. Firebase by default is not queryable and doesn't allow export to GCP or external data warehousing. That is a big issue, right? And this is what you kind of get off the free, but how do you actually solve that? How do you actually make this data accessible? How do you actually make it something that you can work with kind of in the future? The answer is BigQuery. How familiar is everybody with BigQuery, or have you heard of it? Raise your hands if you kind of know what it is. It's basically a fancy version of a SQL in the cloud. That's really all you as an app developer need to know about it, and anybody who's actually going to be accessing it and pulling data information in needs to know about it either. So let's take a look at some of the information that we just got. Now, how do I actually take my application and make it queryable with BigQuery? So in the actual Firebase console, all you do is go to Project Settings, go to Account Linking, and then what you'll see here, just like you see down here, is a Manage Linking page. So you'll actually have a thing that says, would you like to link this with BigQuery? And in order to link it with BigQuery, you need to have a Google Cloud account. Again, pretty simple to do. But I have all of these actually enabled. So I already did take a look at this. And this is where it takes you. So you're going to have a couple different tables. So in this case, I have app events. And if we want to look at some of what we actually captured in raw data format, we can actually do that. So in this case, I have the user ID, which I attached as part of the Firebase information. And then I can see the properties that I have, such as favorite food, first time open. The food that I chose in this case for this particular instance of it was hamburgers. And they didn't have anything special attached to their first open. And then you can see information like their Nexus 6 user and things like that. Then you can take this data and actually export it, or you can just go ahead and compose a query against it. Now, you can see the raw data kind of down here, either as schema, detailed information, or preview. And you can start writing your query here. Now, what they also have is a format button, so it supports the modern query information. So if you're familiar with just like MySQL style queries, that's what all the BigQuery stuff is now. It used to have its own version of like SQL query info, and it was really weird. But if you know how to use a SQL query, you can do it here. You can also show options like being able to see how much that query is going to cost and the amount that's actually how long it's going to take to run. But we don't really care about that so much as being able to actually export that data, and you can do that directly from here. So yeah, that means that this isn't free. BigQuery costs money, just like I said earlier. But there is a really good video that goes through Google Cloud pricing And there is an awesome, awesome page on this very subject right over here. So you can actually go through and get direct pricing info as to what that's actually going to cost you. But I'm going to make this really simple. You don't have to do all that much. So an example cost here, 20,000 users, let's say you're tracking about 15, 20 events, 20,000 active monthly users. You should have the cost be no more than like $2 to $5 a month if you're running about 50 queries a day. Depending on how big those queries are, the cost is actually more so in the query. So that actual cost of data warehousing is only like 25 cents for all those users and all that information. But the actual queries will cost you like $1 or two of that total cost. And sending it up to the cloud, again, really minimal cost. So tell me how many places will do it for like literally $5. I mean, it's cheaper than lunch, y'all. So it's about the price of a free t-shirt. This is kind of a scenario that's kind of like winning a Lamborghini on like Price is Right, and then finding out later you got to pay for the taxes. It's like you are getting a lot for having to pay, you know, a 5% like buyer's fee or something like that. So be able to take that into account. They really want you to get involved in the analytics platform and be able to build on it, and it is a continually growing thing. And if anything else, we shouldn't expect that this cost should change. If we look at the cost of other GCP services and Google Cloud services, this is the exact same thing. So there is slide information, but I wanted to show you a couple other things that you can actually do with this. So first off, you have kind of the standard user being able to manage users just like you can for any GCP project. So I can add users and handle things, and administratively this can be taken care of by kind of your existing services, especially if you use Google for work. Being able to add people and remove people and manage permissions very simply is invaluable. So I will throw an example out there. I write banking software. We have about 100 different projects on here, and at least 6 different configuration files per client. I can assign the permissions that client has on a per project basis, which means that I can do it from a mass system from just the regular Google Cloud interface and be able to manage who has access to it, what information they have access to in that system, and be able to give that to all the right people and manage that very simply. In fact, I have been doing been the primary admin for this system up until we got some more dev people on there. I was able to handle this myself. This is something you can handle yourself, being able to add emails from work, right? So that's pretty nice. But what if I want to actually start generating information from that data? So this is where we can start getting into Data Studio. So are you familiar with Data Studio by chance? Anybody? Okay. So again, this is where it comes into the I don't want to be super bright, and I also like being very lazy. So this is great where I can take the information that I've already set up into BigQuery, into a database, and I can start building reports on it. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, you can see my really terrible website here, but we're not going to count the app events. Let's actually do something like world population data. Yeah, we'll just add it to the report. All right. So all I have to do right here is literally just grab a chart type and do a pull down, and oh my god, I can pick all the data that I want it to show, and it automatically generates the graph and the page for me. All I have to do is pick the type that I want it to display as. And I can even do fancier things with setting colors and, you know, how many people are in here and what event happened where. But this means that your user experience folks don't have to know about the data. They can have auto-generated reports, and every time they revisit this report, it will be able to show that for them. Okay. God knows. All right, so here you can actually see that we did this with basically nothing, and I can do the same thing. Just draw it out. Woo, and I got a little line graph. Nothing fancy. But I hope this explains some of the stuff that you can do with it. I do have links to other information on how to integrate this with TensorFlow and other compute resources and Firebase performance and things like that. But yeah, so here's my information. My name is Stacy. I recently became a Google developer expert, but it's not on the site yet, so I guess it's not real until that happens. And I lead a financial tech company, do a bunch of stuff with IoT and pinball and things like that. But if you have any questions, now's the time.
So for BigQuery, are you able to export that data into something not Google platform?
Yes, so that actually exports as a CSV file, or a like table file, which you can totally import to like any other service, and you can even make it viewable on like Excel. There is some stuff that you can do with the Google Docs side and being able to import those tables, because remember, it's just a table, right? And all these tools are just something that enable it so that you can automatically generate things from those tables without having to do extra stuff. All right,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And just one last question. You were talking about how Firebase Analytics have some like default properties like login and those kind of things. When you're migrating from another analytics service, basically, are those properties just like string keys, stuff like that?
So you can use they actually have parameters that you can pre-assign.
Okay.
And those are actually described as part of their kind of base implementation. But you can actually put your own custom parameters. Now, what I would also say is if you are building an analytics platform or you're migrating an analytics platform, this is the opportunity to build a endpoint abstracted version of that so that you never have to do that again. If you're literally just doing it based off an event system, you should build the analytics into your application as an event system and then have that event be captured and then sent to whatever analytics platform or otherwise that you actually want it to use. But I do want to provide one quick question. Somebody tell me something they learned that they had not thought about until after this application. Like, what are you going to do next, or what kind of was the most inquisitive to your mind? Somebody raise your hand. It's a free thing. This is an opportunity for redemption, sir. This is an opportunity for you. You okay? Go ahead.
Using Data Studio to kind of play around with how to make charts for data reports. So.
Yeah. I don't have to be a developer to do it. And bonus points. There is a lot of extra information on how to do fancy stuff with BigQuery. I suggest following the Firecasts and doing all kinds of fun stuff. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stacy. Good job.
Woohoo!